Fan interference.
Good afternoon and welcome into the Fan Interference Podcast. I'm Everett Hutto along with Tim Beeman in studio. Ty Collins on location, presumably at his house.
Presumably.
And Bijan Todd, well, we have no idea. He's making wedding plans last I heard. I'm not really sure.
Uh-oh.
All right, so jump right into it, I suppose. The big news that happened Friday at 9:37 p.m. The NCAA versus House case was settled, meaning that colleges and universities can now pay student athletes for the first time in the history of college sports, or at least college athletics. The reason this is a big deal is because if you've ever heard anything come out of the NCAA and any of the presidents prior to the current one, it was that that student athletes were always to be amateur. That to compete in the NCAA, to compete in college athletics, mean you had to be an amateur and could not be paid directly by schools. Schools have been given the death penalty for paying athletes. SMU in the early 80s, numerous schools placed on probation for giving money to student athletes. That all ended at 9:37 p.m. on Friday night with the approval of the settlement of this lawsuit, which actually ends 3 different lawsuits against the NCAA. But now colleges are allowed to pay student athletes. I'm not even sure if we can use student athlete anymore. Like now they're just athletes. Now they're just paid. I think we still stop short of employee for the moment, but what are your thoughts on the settlement, Ty?
Yeah, just look how far we've come, right?
Well, I'm not sure. Not sure how far we've come yet. But
here we are where you would get in trouble for giving a kid a slice of pizza or letting him go or pay for his flight to a funeral. And now here we are.
Well, and that's actually the bit, is that the NCAA manual, back when I was coaching, which quite a while ago, but I actually had to take the test and go through the 590-something pages of the NCAA manual and be tested on it. And there were some pretty stupid rules. Like, as a volleyball coach, I was not allowed to drive one of our volleyball players to the airport so that they could go home for Christmas break. Not allowed. It's an extra benefit. Why it's an extra benefit, I don't know. Because I would if a regular student whom I was friends with said, hey, I need a ride to the airport, I would do that. But because a volleyball player, I'm not allowed to take them to the airport. So there were some really bad rules. Now, I think there were some good rules in there too, but there were some dumb ones. And that's where this all started with, I can't remember the Michigan player. Who was one of the Fab Five Michigan basketball?
Jalen Rose,
Juwan Howard, I
Chris
believe
Webber.
is who it was. No, it was Chris Webber. It was Webber. That's right. Famously, Webber is walking down the street of Ann Arbor and sees his jersey in the window and says, I can't even buy my own jersey, at the shop. Mm-hmm. Well, BS. You have 3 of them as it is, but, never mind. My problem with the whole thing is the notion that student athletes were never compensated. They were never paid directly, but a scholarship is not free. A scholarship is actually worth money. To get out of school without any debt is value. Athletic training has value. They don't pay for any of that. Your room and board has value. Your meal plan has value. If you ask regular college kid who's paying and we'll just use 1992 since that's what I know. $10,000 for in-state tuition, another $600 for your meal plan. And, if you get hurt, you've got to go, somewhere to get looked at. That's easily $20,000 worth of benefit in 1992. Now in 2025, it's probably closer to $50,000 or $60,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
I have a hard time saying athletes were never, compensated.
Right.
But
they may not have been paid.
They weren't paid. But now they're allowed to be paid. So now that this is the law of the land and there's no use in we're not going backwards. What is the next thing that's going to happen? Because now we have a commission, the College Sports Commission, run by Brian Seeley of MLB fame. He's now in charge of, and the Deloitte, is it Deloitte? Yeah, Deloitte accounting firm. They are now in charge of every NIL deal worth over $600. So if you do a deal, $600. So if you do a deal with such and such media, you're a Wake Forest student athlete, and you do a deal with such and such media for radio appearances, and Tim's going to pay you $750. That deal has to go through the Deloitte accounting firm and seen if it was legal, like if that's market value. So what's going to happen when the Deloitte firm says, no, that should only be worth $400. You're overpaying. We can't allow this deal to go through. Crickets.
Yeah,
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to get sued. Like the kid's going to say, no, how can you tell me what fair market value is? Fair market value is whatever somebody's willing to pay me. This guy's willing to pay me $700. I'm taking this to court.
yeah.
So what then does Deloitte or the College Sports Commission, what jurisdiction do they actually have? Like,
It's like the FCC. The FCC actually has very little true jurisdiction, but they imply themselves everywhere.
I don't think we're done with lawsuits. I think this House settlement is, I think two things about it. First of all, we've been knowing that athletes were going to get paid for the last little bit. This has been going on for a while. We've expected this. We really expected it to get done in March. Certainly expected it by April. It's taken till June, but we kind of knew it was going to happen. So all the schools are prepared. They've all done spreadsheets and balance their budgets based on this $20.5 million. That's not a surprise to anybody. What I read today was that a group of female athletes are appealing the settlement, saying that it violates Title IX, which it probably does.
What is Title IX?
Title IX is a federal law done in 1974 that says that you cannot discriminate, or that a school, an educational institution cannot discriminate based on sex. Which means in an athletics point, if you're giving 50% of your money to men, you should be giving 50% to women.
Okay.
If you have 18 sports and 9 of them are for men, there should be 9 for women. Women should not be discriminated based on sex for money, for number of opportunities. They should have the same educational benefits as their male counterparts.
Okay.
So when you have a settlement that says 75% of the money goes to football players, another 10 can go to basketball players, that only leaves 15% for everybody else, including the women. So does that violate Title IX? Probably. But again, we have an administration that doesn't really seem to care about anybody's rights. So Who knows? That lawsuit will happen. There will be a lawsuit when, like I said, the first time this commission denies somebody money, that's going to get a lawsuit.
Which we already saw that before, right? With the issue with the Utah or the UNLV quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't sue though. He just left. It's the Vanderbilt quarterback that sued for not for money but for eligibility.
That's right.
Right. But he wasn't given. But
the UNLV guy just left
because he was guaranteed something and he didn't get it. So his agent said, "Well, he's just not coming back."
Yeah, he's split, and we've never heard from him again. and that's part of it. And the other thing that I want to ask you, and I actually want to ask, I want your opinion on this, Ty. All we've heard about over the last 6 months is college coaches saying, we just want rules. We just need some guidelines. We don't want the NIL to be the wild, wild west. Tell us the rules and we'll follow them.
Yep.
This coming from the same people who have been cheating for the last 150 years. Like college coaches have honestly been trying to skirt the rules forever. And now we're supposed to believe them when they say, oh, we just need some guidelines. Just tell us what to do and we'll follow the rules.
And you know why?
Well, because they don't want to just be paying crazy money.
Well, but they also, now it's open gates. So now their competitors can do that. So it's like, well, now we need guidelines.
Well, yeah, they want everybody playing by the same rules. But
so they can
break them. Right. And that's kind of my issue is with this whole thing. Like
sound like the prohibition era. Whoa. So now alcohol is legal? Well, we need some rules now. And the mafia's like, well, didn't you guys used to go underneath the ground and make a lot of money? Yeah, but we need rules now.
Well, and that's kind of the point.
Yep.
Is that yes, everybody wants to play, and who knows? I don't know what the percentage is. Like maybe 50% play by the rules, maybe 75% play by the rules, maybe 10% play by the rules. I don't know how many people are actually following the rules.
Neither. That's what, like we keep doing this over and over again, and it's great content. But and this is not a knock on you, Everett, because this is a very good topic. But like we just really don't know because we kept talking about, well, there's got to be some kind of there's got to be some more intricacies on how you handle this rather than just open the gates. They've opened the gates, and now we just sit back and get rushed over, and all I get is this blank look on my face. And then Everett saying, so what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's just like there is no governing to it. And it is, like you said, the wild, wild west. And now what that's going to do is you talk about the future. We're going to look into, guess what? It's already happening. High school.
Well, that is a thing.
NIL.
That's a real thing. There is already a high school kid. I think it's a high school kid or a group of kids who want NIL money. Yep.
Already they got a kid that was, I think in North Carolina that went to a private school, whatever, because he got bukus of money.
And I just...
Wow.
I don't... Well, see, my problem with the high school thing, and I guess I'm just old-fashioned. Again, I went to high school in 88 to 92. It's been a while. We didn't get to choose.
Hold strong, brother. Hold strong, brother.
We lived in a place which was told to go to this school. And so we went to that school. That was all there was to it. Exactly. We didn't get to choose what schools we were going to.
Yeah.
I guess we could have gone to private schools if our parents had that much money, but they didn't. And
well, now you can actually choose your school.
Cool. Yeah. See, that's something that's completely foreign to me.
And yeah, me too. But now I did know there was loopholes because so I had some guys on my soccer team that came from like their where they lived was not in the area where they would have to attend Reynolds High School. But how the loopholes was is because where their parents worked or so forth, they could have that address and come into the school. So, I mean, I had a girlfriend that lived all the way out in BFE, and she got in because the volleyball program at Reynolds was great. So, like, you know, this is how that's how it got the ball rolling. But yet, and then now it's even more easier to pick your school, which I go back and forth because, okay, I feel like you should have a choice, but the other part is I see how that doesn't. It ends up being like, modern day segregation. You know?
Well,
like
no, it is, and it's not even. I guess it's not segregation because it's not forced, but it's implied segregation. It's
right.
I want to go where all the white kids go, or I want to go where all the rich kids go, or I want to go where all the, I don't know, whatever, debutantes go. Whatever it is you like, you go there. Or I want to go to the, now we did, that is one that we did have a choice. There was an art school called Pebblebrook High School that was like the school for the arts. They had terrible athletics. But you could go there.
Yeah.
If you wanted, if you were like an art person, you could go to Pebblebrook no matter where you went. But that was the only one. Like I went to Wheeler because I was zoned and districted to Wheeler. I went to East Cobb to Wheeler. You went through the line and you were either good or you weren't, but those were the kids you got.
Yeah.
There was no recruiting when I was in high school.
Well, and there
He's
was
so old he has a Jesus Christ starter jacket.
I do remember starter jackets now. I might have had a starter jacket.
Wait a minute. Do not knock starter jackets.
No.
I'm not knocking.
I have a Steelers starter jacket.
I didn't say anything about knocking them.
Yeah.
But here's one other question I want to get to before we leave this topic. Murray State, the Racers, are in the College World Series. You can remember fairly recently when Butler University was in the championship game of the NCAA tournament. Florida Gulf Coast and George Mason in the Final Four. Now that you're allowed to pay players, now that you can either opt in or opt out. We haven't even talked about the opting in or opting out of this that colleges can do. Once this goes through and once we kind of get into this bit about paying players, do you think that the Murray States, the George Masons, the Butlers, the Florida Gulf Coasts, do you think we'll see more or less of these runs in the NCAA tournaments?
See, that is a good question. I think you would say, your first reaction would be less, right?
Well, I guess we got to mention this opt-in and opt-out thing. So the way this settlement works is each school has the ability to opt into the settlement or opt out of the settlement. If you opt in, that means you are saying that you want to be one of the top schools and you're going to pay this $20.5 million to your students. 75% towards football, 10% to basketball, and 15% to everybody else. That is the opt-in. Some schools, like UNC Asheville, who only has an $8 million budget to begin with, has already opted out. And by opting out, they are saying, we're not paying our student athletes. We're just not.
Look, so tell me if I'm just, I don't know, spitting off the melon and just not making any sense. But can you see a situation, Everett, where you'll have the ones that are the NIL, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the ones that aren't NIL, and what they use that as a feeder to NIL promise. Because you can't make money if you're not playing. So what I'm getting at is do you have one side where it's a non-NIL and it's a bunch of hungry athletes looking for a pathway not only to the pros, but to a bigger university. So that's why I'm thinking like JUCO would be maybe an interesting investment because there are so many players that peak later in their career and that become great. And then not only that, they become like draft picks, big draft picks, or a la a walk-on that becomes the number one draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft, a la Charlie Condon.
Well, that's not. I think you're close.
But what I'm saying is, do you just cut the line and then say, okay, well, our culture is we are competing, but we're also getting you on stage so you can be seen and possibly make money to the next level in the NIL NCAA universe.
So yes and no. What I do think will happen, and the more I look at this, the more I really do think this is what's going to happen. I think
Why is that? Because it's Everett.
No, I'm just saying.
We don't need. I'm just giving you smack.
This is my honest opinion.
All right, go.
I think that the 90 or so schools, and you can argue that it should be about 45, but in reality, it's going to be closer to 90. It's going to be the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Sun Belt, maybe the Missouri or the MAC, the Mid-American, and the American Conference. Those 6 conferences have about 15 schools each, and that's going to get you to about 90 schools. I think those are the schools that are going to opt in. I think those are the schools that are going to take the brunt of this settlement, and they're going to pay their athletes, and they are going to become the College Sports Commission, whatever they are. And those, it's going to be about 90, will be something different than the NCAA. And then the other 130, no, it's actually 230 because there's 330 schools. The other 240 schools who are going to opt out, who have small budgets and all of that, are going to say, look, we're just not going to do it. We're not in it. We're not going to compete at the highest level, but we're going to still have athletics, but it's going to be more like college athletics. We're just not going to pay them. And I do think that divide will happen. So that's what you're talking about, is that divide. Now,
or does the JUCO go away and it's like D2 schools and D3 schools?
Well, everybody just drops down. Like Division II becomes Division III, Division III becomes Division IV, and JUCO is still what JUCO is. Where the only mistake or the only little flaw in logic that I can see in your JUCO case is that most of the JUCO players that have gone on to big things like the Cam Newtons, they started somewhere.
Yeah, right.
They started at Florida, then went to JUCO because they couldn't pass, and then became somebody. They didn't start at JUCO and work their way up.
No. Yeah, true. But there has been cases where there has been good players that had to start with the JUCO that moved their way up. Now, but I'm also saying now when you're talking about that, which makes perfect sense, I totally agree with that. Also, think about this, Everett. Everybody in the United States, well, at least before, or hopefully still, was all about second chances. So you have somebody that tears the ACL that still has eligibility left, right?
Yep.
No one's going to risk giving him NIL money. But I tell you what, say a team that's not in the NIL would love to experiment and take a flyer on this person and see how this person can resurrect itself, which therefore makes a great story and also benefits both parties because you benefit the school by you've got a great athlete on the project, and then B, for the athlete, he has been given a second chance, and he also is on a platform where he can be looked at to get back to where he was.
No, absolutely.
So,
and I think those things will still happen. The only concern
that's what I loved about Jim Grobe when he was coaching at Wake. So now he understood the assignment. He knew where he was at. He was coach at Wake Forest, which you're kind of at the bottom because compared to everybody else with money and everything, you're at the bottom. So what he did was when he recruited, he would find the players that all of a sudden got their scholarship snatched away because of an ACL or something like that. And they had the senior year where they were on the shelf, but, still had plenty of good years left. So he would swoop in there and say, hey, since, Alabama decided to take your scholarship, we're interested. We'd like to take a flyer in on you. What do you say? And then it usually, from the history of Jim Grove and how he did it, usually worked out well for Wake Forest and the player.
Yeah.
So,
and that can certainly happen. Let me ask you another question. This is off that tangent a little bit because I do think that's where we're headed. The interesting thing with that will be, I said 6 conferences at 15 apiece. That's 90 schools. There's a lot of people that think that there should only be like 40 because the bottom 5 of all of those conferences probably aren't good enough to really compete for a championship. So if you're one of those bottom 5, and you can, I'm not gonna list anybody. I'm not gonna name names. You just pick whoever your bottom 5 of those conferences you think are. Do you think those conferences will look at it themselves and say, you know what? We're probably not going to win a football championship. We might not even be very good in football. Let's not give 75% of our money to football. Let's give football only 50, or baseball or soccer or tennis. Pick your favorite sport. But do you think schools will say, look, we're going to choose to not be as competitive in football. We're going to finish in the bottom of our league. We're fine. But we think we have a really great chance in basketball or baseball or tennis or soccer, whoever you like. And we're going to put more money towards that, and we're going to be really good in that. The other option is what about schools? What about schools like, well, Connecticut does technically have football, but like Villanova or Georgetown, who don't have football.
Do they set a lot?
75%
to the football?
Now they can give 75% to the basketball team.
Georgetown doesn't have a football team anymore?
No, I don't believe so. If they do, they're non-scholarship.
Well, I mean, I knew they weren't like, they were like...
They're either
like
non-scholarship
Villanova.
or don't exist. Yeah, I don't think they have it. But if they do, like I said, they're not prominent. But like your Creightons or your Marquettes, those schools that don't, or St. John's.
Xavier.
Those schools that don't really have football, they can give buku money to basketball.
Yeah, so there's not a part in the agreement that says you have to do it for football. No. It says you are given this amount of allowance.
It says you can go up to 75% for football. Up to.
Yeah, I mean, I could.
So it's anywhere between 0 and 75.
In fact, I will say this, and a person anonymous who came to me and said, "What wouldn't you think it would behoove certain university that if they decided just to scrap football and use all the NIL for basketball and bring back, say, a basketball type school environment again?" And it made me think.
That's my question. Yeah, and I'm not even saying you have to scrap football. I'm just saying you choose to be non-competitive in football. Or not even non-competitive. That's the wrong word. But not give football as much and put, like, let's say we're talking about, we're trying not to say schools' names. Let's just say we're talking about a local university in town. And you decide, we're only going to go
college.
50, we're only going to give 50% to football. Okay. And we're going to go 40% basketball, which is in comparatively to your conference more to basketball than anybody else. Or if you're Boston College or Syracuse, who doesn't really have Syracuse has a good football tradition, but you don't think you're going to be particularly good.
Right.
And you just say, let's give some to, or let's say you're Coastal Carolina. What is Coastal Carolina known for? They won a baseball championship in 2016. They are in the college
World Series.
They are in the College World Series. Why would Coastal Carolina give any of their money to football? Like, what do we care about Coastal Carolina football? Their baseball team is the thing.
Yeah,
That's Chanticleers.
Chanticleer,
yeah. But it has been able to benefit the university because of the success of their football team that they've had. Now I know they're more of a baseball school. Yes, absolutely true. And I tell you what, even though Wake Forest, and I got to see them twice, Wake Forest swept them, I was more impressed with the Coastal Carolina this year in baseball than I was in the previous years under the new coach Schnall.
Well, he's not that new.
But, yeah, I know he's been there for a long, but as a head coach,
right?
But even on top of him trashing Florida's coach, which he deserved it, but
well, it's Florida. Of course he did.
Yeah, shut the heck. Then the punch in the gut. Yeah, I mean, I tried to find somewhere where I could back him up. There's little, but at the same time, I'm like, no, sir, you need to have a better understanding on what universe you live on. But so I've always been a fan of Small. I think he has it right, and I'm glad they're in the College World Series. I'm gonna be rooting for them. But I think a lot because of their football team that had some good years, and they might have some good years in the future. I think that helped them get their facilities that they have now. So,
well, no, it definitely. Look, I remember when Coastal Carolina started football, and the school that I went to, Winthrop, decided not to add football. And I will tell you with 100% certainty, Coastal Carolina became Coastal Carolina once they added football. Like, no one had ever heard of Coastal Carolina before they added football. Now, it helped that they had the CEO of Feta.
Steve.
And anyway, I can't remember the brand, but he was a CEO of a company, and he had some money to spend, and so that really helped them. Like, they didn't just add football from nothing; they had some help along the way. And I can't remember what company he was. It was a financial TD Ameritrade. I think he was part of that.
Well, Georgetown does have a football team.
Okay.
They're known as the Hoyas still. They are Division One championship subdivision, FCS.
FCS. Okay.
And they're in the Patriot League.
All right. So they do have football. But again, they're FCS. So they're not really competitive football.
No.
Are they giving, like Villanova and these, are they giving money? Wouldn't they do a good job if they only gave 50% of the football?
Yes.
I mean, this is Georgetown we're talking about.
No. I mean, you look at, like you said, it's a perfect example too, Everett, where you have Villanova and Georgetown. All those will quickly say without any hesitation, we are a basketball school. Yeah. And we will use that money for the benefit of the basketball program more so than football. It's like, and nothing changes. So they're not losing anything. The only thing they're doing is they're gaining for their basketball program. So
now let me ask you about UConn, because UConn does have a football team, and they have a coach that used to be in the NFL, and he's going to be hard pressed to say you're not giving us money. But again, UConn men's and women's basketball is everything, right?
You know what? Yeah. You know what? I mean, honestly, if I was in charge of the BOG or whatever for UConn, I would, as painful this would to be, I would say, look, we're going to cut football and we're just doing basketball because that's where we got our name from. That's
but I'm not saying you have to cut. I don't know that I agree with cutting. Like,
or just not put the emphasis on it.
Yeah. I'm saying they don't need 75%.
Invest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nothing changes.
Because I'm against cutting. I don't want to see Jim Mora as the head coach at UConn, by the way.
Oh, I was going to tell you that.
Yeah.
You were going to say Steve.
I don't want to see sports cut. Like, I really don't. And I've seen some things on I mean, I know you should never believe anything you see on YouTube, but I've seen some things that have said, non-revenue sports are going to get cut. All the money's going to go to, football and basketball, and your soccers and your tennises are all going to go away. I don't believe that's going to happen. But it is interesting to me where schools make decisions. Like, let's take Texas Tech, for example. Texas Tech just paid a softball player $1 million in NIL money.
Yeah.
And they made the College World Series final. Now, they lost to Texas, but they made it to the final. Basically because of this one player who they gave $1 million to. She's a pitcher and a hitter, so she pitched like every game. Because you can do that in softball.
She's the one that's like the badass, right?
Yeah. I mean, she just got $1 million NIL deal. Pretty good. She came from Stanford. She was at Stanford, and she got recruited by Texas Tech. Oil money to come. But anyway, literally Texas Tech, which was like picked last in their conference last year, now because of one player paying this pitcher $1 million, now made it to the championship game in softball. Again, is Texas Tech they had Mahomes, but they didn't win with him.
Crabtree.
They've had good players.
Wes Welker.
But they didn't win. When was the last time they won anything?
I mean, they've always been in like...
They've always been in a major conference.
Big 12.
But again, when was the last time they won?
Well, come on. Let's say, I mean, you could say that for...
you can say that for a lot of people. I know.
When's the last time Oklahoma won?
1985. No, they won before then or since then, I think. But they did win in 85. Yeah, something like that. Oh, yeah. Late 90s. But anyway, my point is, if you're not going to win, why give 75% to football? Like, I think only 20 or 30 schools should give 75% to football. Why not invest in women's softball?
Yeah, right. But what they're going to say is, and I wish we had somebody that was the head of like the athletic department up here, because I think they would answer this better. But I think what they would say is, yeah, we're probably not going to win, but we can at least go by the mirage that there is hope. And if there's hope, there's people willing to spend money to come and become fans, come to these games, and latch on to also benefit the university, because it's a cash cow with football.
And that's a good point. That is an excellent point, and I agree with you 100%. But I'm just saying, if you can be really good in something else,
the temptation is there.
Wouldn't you jump onto that? Like, would it be so bad to be a softball school if you're Texas Tech? Or would it be so bad to be a women's soccer school if you're, I don't know who you want to be?
But let's say, for instance, if you are an athletic director, okay, Everett, you're sitting here and you've got a university, and then each of the program's head coach comes to you after you look at the spreadsheet on how competitive they are, how close they are, where they are stats-wise, and you see where you are as far as a team that, say, did not hoist the cup. So, like, say, for Wake Forest, you wouldn't say the tennis team because they did win the national championship. But you would look and say, how close are we? And which each coach, like, pitch why their program deserves the most and how close they are and how dominant they could be.
Okay, let's use Wake Forest. Let's play this game.
Okay.
Your good friend Bobby Muse, who he hasn't won a national championship, but he has been the number one team in the country multiple times. He has been to numerous Final Fours. And your good friend Tony DeLuce, who was just in the national championship final.
Yep.
Do you think they wouldn't come to you and say, hey, you know what? We could very well be a soccer school. If we don't give football, who finished 14th in the ACC, if we don't give them 75%, give us 20%, and we can be a soccer powerhouse.
No, I'm not even. Here's something, too. I'm not at liberty to say this, but too much. But I will say this. All right. Look at what Wake Forest has for soccer-wise why that's appealing not only for a student athlete, but this also goes against the grain for like football. You have a backup plan with a degree from Wake Forest, which gets a lot of soccer players to Wake Forest because soccer players are very smart. Shut up, Everett. So
I didn't say anything.
But anyway,
I said you weren't very smart.
That is true. That is true. But so you are getting them into the door of, say, Wake Forest because of how valuable that degree is, and it is valuable. Okay.
Yep.
Now, on top of that, the facilities that they have are very impressive to the fact that is appealing to the highest stage of organizations. I'll just say that, where it's appealing, where they think the facilities are superb.
I'm not arguing with you on any of this.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm giving you I'm saying. So
Okay.
if you have a organization or a club or a program that is at the top of its game of the world that thinks great of these facilities, and you've got a program that is consistently in the NCAA tournament, in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight or whatever.
So what you're saying is they don't need any extra money. They're doing fine just the way they are.
Good.
Because if I'm the athletic department, you're making this pitch. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, you're good. You've got all this. You don't need any extra money.
I'm countering it by saying we're almost there. If we just get that extra cheat code, imagine where we would be.
Look,
Got it?
again, I don't disagree with you. I actually think that Wake Forest wouldn't necessarily be wrong to give a little extra to men's and women's soccer, both of them. And I think that maybe they should put in a little more to men's and women's basketball, because I understand they were in the ACC championship game in 2021 or 2020,
yeah.
whenever it was.
Yeah. 2021.
Yeah. But you've been in 2 ACC championship games in the last 20 years. I mean, are you going to compete with Clemson and Florida State, Louisville, North Carolina, Miami on a regular basis in football? Maybe not.
Well,
I mean, maybe.
And this is kudos to John Curry,
Mm-hmm.
but he saw the writing on the wall with Coach Clausen, and he was proactive and immediately went after a hot new young coach that got chicken crap and made it into chicken salad at Washington State. And he pounced on it, which was, I mean, an A+ to me. I know you haven't seen them play, and they could be terrible, but right now, as for what the environment was at the time, I think that was a grand slam hire.
Okay. And maybe it is. And you know what? Maybe they'll be great. And it actually becomes harder if they are. Like, let's say Wake goes 8-4 in football this year. Then it actually becomes harder because you're like, well, football's pretty good, so maybe we do need to put more to them.
Right.
But then does that make basketball and soccer fall off a little bit? Or can you figure out how to still give 75% to football and still have the other sports be just as good as they are now? I mean, that's the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're also having to sell academics too.
Well, I don't know. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with selling academics. That was great under the old model. But now everybody is a professional.
But it's still valuable though. It's still valuable.
Is it?
I mean,
yes. Look, wait, let me rephrase that. Yes, I agree with you that it's still valuable. I'm just saying, if you're 18 years old, is it important to you? Would you rather have the money or would you rather have the education if you're 18 to 19 years old?
Right. Well, that depends on who you have yourself around
Right,
who is around you. But
if you're Florida State, if Florida State is in your league where a Florida State education means nothing, or a Louisville education, well, okay, Florida State maybe, but at Louisville it means nothing. If you have you seen the kids that go to Louisville?
Yeah.
Look, I will caveat this. I had a friend of mine, Tony Campana, who played 7 years in Major League Baseball for the Cubs. Started his college career. Started his career at UNC Asheville. Played 2 years at UNC Asheville. Was going to get kicked off the team because he didn't know his way to class. Had assistant coaches walking him to his classes because he didn't know where they were.
At UNC Asheville.
At UNC Asheville. Transferred to Louisville and was a 3.0 student all of a sudden. Don't tell me they're taking athletics seriously over there.
Man, Everett, their tutors are fantastic.
Apparently.
Well, I just thought it was funny that when the baseball team went to Louisville, and one of the fans decided to heckle Javar Williams and said, on his average, is that your GPA or your average, you bum? And I was about to hit the mute button on the radio mic and stick out my head out the window and be like, excuse me, do you know where you go to school? But I didn't.
Yeah. So look, so I'll give I'll give Florida State a pass. Maybe they're going to class. I don't know, but I know a 3.0 at Louisville is like a 1.3 at other schools.
I don't know. I've never been there. Mitch McConnell went there, one of the best ever to do it. But so there's got to be a lot of good academics there.
I'm sure some people take it seriously.
I'm joking.
But anyway, but that's kind of my point. If you are, I just don't know now that we're taking the educational bit out of this. I mean, they're still getting scholarships, but I just don't know if these kids who are making this money are really factoring in the education at all. I don't know that they're planning on being at a school more than 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that is that's the question that's going to always sit in the back of your head. And because you are giving 18-year-olds, and me as if I go back to me being 18 years old, yeah, young, dumb, full of, what I mean. You're thinking, all right, here's the money. You show me the money right now. I'm like, I'll figure things out later.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm the same way. If you that's the whole reason why
they got into this debt in the first place. And this was without showing your prowess for your athletics. This was just because a credit card company said, here, you could take a credit card and, as long as you pay this amount, you could still keep it going. Well, my dumb friends in college, I mean, it wasn't me. So at one point that I was actually smart, that was it. They said, oh, it's like a free pass for free money. And I'm like, no, you got to eventually pay that back, right? And then now you saw the problems with the college debt. And I'm sitting there going like, well, no kidding. Because I know that was just a small sample size, but I'm sure everybody in the country did the same thing.
They absolutely did. Card? Look, I remember very, very clearly my first week of college. And again, we're talking 1992, so it's been a while. First week of college, we walk into the student union. There are financial people handing out credit cards left and right. Yep. Like they would give you a credit card. Yeah, immediately, the balance was like $500 or $600. It wasn't a lot, but they knew you weren't paying it back. Right. And I thought that was wrong. I don't think companies should have been allowed to do that.
Predatory, yes, predatory. The other thing too is how can you tell your friend they're wrong? Because they say, well, I'm gonna gamble on myself, and I'll make the money as soon as I get out of college and have a good job. Now, to me, I kind of had a better idea of how the atmosphere was after you got out of college, and a lot of people were moving back to their parents' house.
Yeah.
So it's like, good luck. I'm glad you have lots of confidence in yourself, but let's play it a little bit easier. Thank God I did and didn't get a credit card, get into a few huge debt. So
Well, and that's where I think that the schools, and I think the schools do. I know Wake Forest does, but I think other schools have some financial, I don't know what you call it, financial education, or they've got some things in place to help with that. But again, you know, if you're 18, 19 years old and you've got $1 million check, are you putting that in the bank? Are you putting that in the stock market? Are you putting that in savings? No, you're buying a TV and a video game console and, you know, whatever else. I don't know what's cool at the moment, but, you know, you're probably spending it. You're probably not thinking about saving it.
Nope. I totally agree. That's what, and that's also saying who is in your
Ear.
Yeah, or in your ear. Who is your mentors? And a lot of these kids, they won't have these mentors. So it's
Well,
just
they
like,
won't, and it'll be the worst thing is like the Tanya Harding situation and these parents that are like, oh, well, we need the money. Give it to us. And they end up spending their kids' fortune on themselves.
Yep.
I don't know. There's a lot that needs to be thought of. And the problem with this settlement as it is right now, kind of coming back to what we were talking about, is that, yes, there are now some guidelines and there are some standards, but there's a lot that still needs to be figured out. And right. I think there's going to be a couple of years of some interesting happenings. Like, I do think that women athletes are going to sue. Like, I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later, because right. You can't say you're giving 75% to football and 15% to women's sports and that not be a Title IX violation. Like, I'm sorry, that's just, it's just not going to work out. But again, the current administration that's in power in the courts right now are very conservative, and they don't really seem to have a whole lot of sympathy for women or of people's rights. So maybe they just don't care. And maybe it'll come out that it doesn't matter how much you're giving. And they may just strike down Title IX altogether and say it was a stupid law and we should have never had it in the first place. So who knows? I really am curious what happens on that front, to be perfectly honest. That is, to me, the number one thing that I think is going to be interesting. The number two thing that's going to be interesting is going to be the enforcement of this. What happens to cheaters? And whatever punishment you give cheaters, will it stand up in court?
What is considered cheating now? That's what I don't even know.
So here's a couple of examples. So 2 examples. The first one is you can only give $20.5 million to student athletes from the school. What if school X decides to pay $25 million? What if school X decides to spend more than 75% on football, decides to say they want to spend 90% on football? That's technically against the rule. You're not supposed to spend more than 75% on football, and you're only supposed to spend $20.5 million. What if we go over that? The biggest is this this College Sports Commission, which evaluates every NIL deal over $600 and says, based on fair market value, whether that's a good deal or not. Well, okay. What happens when they say no? What happens when they say this deal is too much? The market value is half that. You can't do that deal. Well, okay. Is that going to stand up in court? Because this is not the end of the lawsuits. Lawsuits are still coming. There's still no antitrust agreement. So this College Sports Commission has the same problem the NCAA had. They have no antitrust exemption. And without it, I don't know that their rules can stand up.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. I don't know. We've gone a long time on this, but I think it's super. I mean, it's important to college. This is the transition that college athletics is in, and there's a lot of layers to this. This is an onion that needs unraveling, and I just think there's a lot of things that haven't been. And I'm not going to say they haven't been thought of, because I'm sure a lot of people have thought about this stuff. But none of this stuff has been resolved. Like, there's a lot of layers that are just kind of out there going, hey, what are you going to do about us?
Yep.
What are you going to do when this happens? Because you know it's going to. And the enforcement, the jurisdiction, the pure numbers. What happens if Alabama just says $20.5 million? We'll give them 30. We'll give them 40. Who cares? We got the money tree out back. It doesn't even matter.
And then we'll play the game of kick the can down the road with courts. And
that's the deal. That's the next part. Because the problem with the NCAA was that everything took 4 years to figure out, 4 years to investigate. You were literally, I mean, they're still working on the Michigan case, the Scanlon case, which happened 2 years ago. They still haven't come to a conclusion on that.
Yep.
So whoever this sports college commission, whatever penalties they bring down have to be swift and immediate and be worth worrying about. I don't know. I don't know if they can.
Yeah,
and then you look at the Murray States and the Coastal Carolinas and the Butlers and the George Masons, and I just wonder what those schools are going to do. Like, it's one thing when you're talking about Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas. They've got money for days. We're not worried about them. I am kind of worried about Winthrop or, Coastal Carolina to some extent, but Murray State and Morehead State and Southeast Missouri State and Louisiana Tech and, whoever you want to talk about. There are a lot of those schools. There's like 200 of those schools.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? I already know UNC Asheville is opting out. They are not going to pay their athletes. But who else? I mean, Murray State has a $10.3 million budget. They can't afford $20.5 million. They just can't. Now they've gotten some support from their boosters up to 21.5. But again, if your whole entire athletic budget is $31.5 million, can you give 20.5 of that to your athletes? I mean, you got to go to competitions, you got to pay coaches, you got to pay support staff. How are you going to do it?
Yep. I don't know. This is the same thing we go over and over again. But quickly, what's the next topic we can get?
Let's quickly talk about Rodgers, because I got to know. Well, there's two things I got to know. I got to know Tim's opinion on Rodgers now that it's official. He's a Steeler. My thing is, this had to have been settled 3 months ago. Like, honestly, this didn't just happen when he came. Apparently, he's married now, right? Didn't I hear he got married? Yeah. So he got married, went on a honeymoon, did whatever, and he came back and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm coming to Pittsburgh to sign the contract." Sounds to me like this contract was decided like 3 months ago.
I mean, we've been talking about it at least that long.
Exactly.
So what was the other question?
Well, the other one is the United States men's national soccer team.
Oh, the U.S. Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
So Rodgers, at this point, who gives a shit? I'm pulling for an
ACL injury.
On play one. Get his ass out of there. Actually, it would be good if he happened in practice. Go ahead and get that over with. But you know what? I'm tired of thinking about it. I'm tired of hating on it. Just do whatever you're going to do. If you get hurt, no, I don't mean that. I mean for Rodgers, do whatever you're going to do. If you play, you play. If you get hurt, or killed, then fine.
All right, let's say Rodgers leads them to the playoffs.
Okay, they'll lose.
Are you happy? Are
They'll
you
lose
sad?
the one and
what
done?
if they make it to the Super Bowl?
I still hate him.
You're still rooting for him.
I'm still a Steelers fan. Yeah, I mean, I did for a little bit. Like, I could be a Commanders fan for a year, or a Lions fan, or a Lions fan for a year. But I'm going to stay here, just actively or secretly pull for Myles Garrett or Trey. What's his face from the Bengals, who's fighting a contract dispute right now, or somebody else, the people who I can't pronounce their name from the Ravens, just to break his fucking leg and get it over with, and then we can move on from this debacle and go on. If he wins, then great. We won a ring. Probably really no thanks to him, but. Whatever. Just do it and shut the hell up. So far, he's not been a piece of shit like he has in the past, and he admitted that his ego probably got in the way a good bit. But you know what? He's old, and he knows he's on his last legs. Let's hope, maybe not hope. Let's just see if he can survive it. And if not, oh well.
That's what I was wondering.
I do know a diehard Steeler fan that has decided to leave the Steelers.
See, I don't like that
this year.
Look,
as much as he couldn't stand them, and which is very interesting to me because he's been diehard ever since I've known him. But he just can't do it.
I don't like that. I think if it's your team, I would rather take Tim's position and be like, yeah, I hope they win, but if he breaks his leg, fine.
Yeah,
I would rather take that position because that position stays with your team.
Yeah.
If you're one of these guys that's going to say, no, I'm going to be a Lions fan for a year, no, that's not right.
I really wouldn't watch Lions games any more than I already do, and I do. When the Steelers aren't playing, that's the team I pull for. But I just am not excited about the season.
Yeah.
I just am not excited about the dickhead that he is being on my team.
I mean, it comes back to that. I don't know. I can't think of a player that played for an Atlanta franchise that was just really a prick. But it's like, if he's on any other team, he's an asshole. But if he's on our team, he's our asshole. So, it's like,
that's the way I felt about Antonio Brown. He was our asshole until he's somebody else's problem.
Exactly. And so I think you got to stick with the team. I'm very much a team guy, not a player guy. So I think you got to stick with it, whether you like him or not.
I have friends in Pittsburgh who are, all right, we're getting on this bus. Well, the bus has already pulled out. He pulled out in 7, 08.
Bettis.
Yeah. But all right. I'm just gonna stop fretting over it now that it's happened. Again, the anticipation is worse than the actual action.
Right.
And if something happens, great. Either way. If we win, great. That's another ring. If he's like put out permanently, great, because that dick's gone.
All right, so Ty.
I still hate him. Fuck him.
So Ty, men's U.S. national team, soccer team.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
What a disgrace. I could go on forever on this. I need to. I'm also going to do some more digging into this, but the performance was absolutely abysmal. I don't know if I was a big fan of bringing Pochettino in, but he has had success before. He's also have had, like, as quick as he rose to the top, he fell to the bottom immediately. This is also the interesting thing about national teams is you can't get your national team, your A team, to play together and gel yet.
Right.
Like, that team that they played majority of that team is not the A team, and that's but you want your B team to at least be competitive too. So
if you need them, and you can.
Well,
find
but
them.
here's my question for you. This is what I want to know, because you hit on it a little bit there. So the news that comes out of camp is that the World Cup is a year away, and we're hosting along with Canada and Mexico. So we're in the World Cup. We don't have to qualify because we're hosting, so we're in. The Gold Cup comes up starting on Sunday, I believe.
yeah,
A tournament that we usually do pretty well in. But we've lost 4 in a row. And our A players are apparently on vacation, starting with Christian Pulisic, and I think there are some others, who are vacationing because they had a rigorous EPL or European season. And so they're taking some time off. So they're basically playing, I think you're being kind with the B team, sort of a B- team, C+ team right now, and going into the Gold Cup with this team that's by standards not very good.
yeah.
But you're hosting the World Cup in a year. Like, doesn't the A team need to be playing these games? Like, don't they need to be together?
Yeah, totally agree. That's,
But they're not. So why?
I know. This is the norm.
Is it?
You would think, you would think that they would be able to come together at least for the Gold Cup. Maybe that they will come together for the Gold Cup. If that's the case, then all eyes will be on this A team, and the A team can pretty much pat the B or the C team, whatever, on the back, say, "Great, you just tighten up the pressure for us because you guys laid an egg, and you guys have been laying eggs." So this Gold Cup is, I tell you what, it's going to be under a big microscope. I can tell you
But
that.
my question is, I don't think Pulisic's playing in the Gold Cup. Is he?
So,
I mean, you know more than I do. This is not my account, but Landon Donovan basically lambasted him for going on vacation and not playing in the Gold Cup.
yep, he's not going to be in the Gold Cup. So
Yeah. So it's clearly not the A team if you don't have your best player. So what are we doing? When?
What are we doing?
I guess not even a question of what are they doing. You can play whoever you want in the Gold Cup. The Gold Cup doesn't matter. But if you're not playing in the Gold Cup, when are you playing with your national team before the World Cup? Like, what other events are there between now and then?
yeah, because especially in the game and soccer, it's all about chemistry, and you have to get that chemistry working and, moving on all cylinders. And you got yourself 1 year until the biggest event, and you're hosting. So
when is this going to happen? When is this coming together and playing together going to happen? What events? I mean, I guess there are a handful of games before the World Cup that they'll play. But when are they going to learn each other?
They'll have international breaks within the year coming up for the professional year, which I would be really, really, really worried if we don't see a string of matches where the A team is on the pitch. That will be very concerning. So I was hoping, or what I was getting, and I did not know that Pulisic was not going to play.
How do you
in
not
the
know
Gold
this?
Cup. You're
Mr. Soccer guy. I knew it.
Yep.
How do you not know it?
I just got the article too about Landon Donovan blasting him, but
I-
I had no idea he was not. I mean, I do know that with, because I was trying to explain to my wife about the.
A crack commando unit was sent to prison.
You
by
keep
a
saying
military
A team.
court.
That's what I'm thinking of.
These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los
was like,
Angeles underground.
and I just hit a
Today,
click.
still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune.
I keep wanting to say, and if you can afford them, or
no
if
one
you
else
can find
help,
them.
and if you can find them,
There you go.
Maybe you can hire
That's right.
the A team.
Love that. Love that. Thank you for bringing that back.
You're welcome.
But I mean, like, even with the World Cup that's going on now, it's the Club World Cup. You might not see a full strength club team. And I was trying to explain that to my wife, is because the professional season is over. This is their time where they like have downtime to be with their family, and they're like, "Oh, well, we got to do the World Cup." They're like, "Well, I would like to recover and be with my family for a little bit." So this is not as important. Now, when it comes to the World Cup, it is important where everything comes to a halt. And I don't know if you're going to use friendlies to get your chemistry up, but I was hoping that the Gold Cup, that would be the plan. But apparently with Pulisic out, interesting. I'm trying to see the whole roster for the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like over the last when was the last World Cup? That was 3 years ago. I feel like over the last couple of years, every time we talk about the men's soccer team, the national team, it's drama. Like there was the feud between Berhalter and the player and the player's family. Now, Donovan and Pulisic are arguing, and it's like this is like a reality show. When are they going to actually play soccer and be good?
Mm-hmm. Yep, can't argue with that.
Or is that just soccer players just always dramatic?
A little bit of both. I don't even see Reyna on this team. So yeah, I mean, there's interesting.
I mean, it's not their best. They're sending B, C, whatever team you want to call it, to this World Cup or Gold Cup, and I just don't know when they're going to get the full group together to play enough to be competitive. I don't know. I mean, when you're losing 4-0 to Switzerland and then 2-1, in 40 minutes, then against whoever they played the game before that, they actually scored the first goal in like the first 5 minutes and then did nothing for the rest of the game.
Yep. Yeah, it's not good, especially when you want to try to block out the noise. You thought it was Berhalter, that was the noise. You got a well-established coach, manager, and still same stuff, same drama, same nonsense.
So anyway, I was just curious. This is your account, so I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, I am. I mean, after seeing the Switzerland game, it was
bad.
How should I say? Yeah, very bad.
It's bad.
Terrible.
That's just terrible.
I just put my head down. Was like, wow, this is going to really get people talking. And yes, it is.
Hey, I have something to say.
Say it.
I love Fruity Pebbles in a major way. What?
No matter if you're a biological father, a stepfather, a fur baby father, or a father figure, you're a father. And this Sunday is Father's Day, and I hope that every one of you in any of those situations and others have a fantastic Father's Day.
You as well, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sam.
We've known each other for a long time, Steve.
Yes, we have. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that's an appropriate place to wrap it up for Ty Collins.
I hope I get some bourbon for Father's Day.
What, you're not drinking right now? Because I am.
No, I know you are. I'm having my nutritious smoothie, so.
They're not that nutritious. They're full of sugar.
Well, no, I made it myself, so it's all like, it's not exactly the best thing that's tasty.
Yeah, well, that's why they put sugar in those things.
No kidding.
All right. For Ty Collins, for Tim Beeman, I'm Everett Hutto. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you next week on Fan Interference.
Oh, yeah. I didn't hit the button, so I'll take care of that later. Bye now.
The views and opinions of this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no material from this podcast can be used or reproduced without the expressed written permission of the Less Desirables Network and Such Limited Incorporated.